Well, it's been quite a few years, I must say, since I've gone through the details of the mathematics of what Socrates is doing with this boy about the relationship between the side and diagonal square and how how do we get a square of double the size. It's actually quite an important aspect of Greek geometry, early Euclidean geometry, we call it now, and it's not really that difficult thing to grasp. But maybe I'll put up some. I'll link you to some explanations of what's going on, or maybe the significance of what's going on. I would probably just get it wrong. I'm not a math person. I mean, I can do my best, but it's clear that there's Plato had a real interest in mathematics, and this particular notion of rational, irrational numbers are involved. But that's not the point. I mean, the point of it is, what is he doing with this demonstrator? What is he seeking to demonstrate? Well, he's seeking to demonstrate the truth of what he thinks is the answer to Meno's paradox about inquiry, that inquiry is impossible. Socrates makes this claim that, it is possible because we already know all things. He says, the soul then, as being immortal and having been born again many times and having seen all things that exist, whether in this world or in the world below, has knowledge of them all. And it is no wonder that she should be able to call to remembrance all that she ever knew about virtue and about everything. So, what is the idea here is that we can engage in inquiry. We will be able to recognize truth if we find it, because we're born already knowing all things, and learning is, as he says, remembering. It's not learning something new; it's remembering what we already knew, but let's say have kind of forgotten. For as all nature is akin, continues here, and the soul has learned all things, there is no difficulty in her eliciting, or as men say, learning, out of a single recollection all the rest, if a man is strenuous and does not faint. For all enquiry and all learning is but recollection. And therefore we ought not to listen to this sophistical argument about the impossibility of inquiry, for it will make us idle, and is sweet only to the sluggard. But the other saying will make us active and inquisitive, in that confiding, I will gladly inquire with you into the nature of virtue. So this is his response. I don't know how seriously to take it, but officially speaking, this is Socrates' response to Meno's paradox about inquiry, is that inquiry is possible because we already know all things, and we just have to kind of remember them, recollect them, regather them from their kind of murky state in our minds or our souls in some way. So philosophy is just a matter of stimulating those memories and connections that will enable us to recall all of these things that we already know. And the idea is, I suppose, we have an immortal soul, and the soul is already, before it was incarnated into our bodies, has already learned everything, and we just need to jog our memories, so to speak. That would be what philosophy is. So in looking into the nature of virtue, we say, well, we already know what virtue is, we just need to remember it, and this process of questioning each other is a process of stimulating that memory. And so Socrates is trying to prove that this is true by taking this little boy who they both know has never been taught mathematics. And Socrates says, well, listen, I'll ask him these questions and I won't supply him with the answers, but I'll stimulate his memory of what he already knows about these matters in mathematics. And it's about a pretty complicated thing about how you double the area of a square. You don't get it from a side that's double the length. It turns out to be a different proportion. It's actually not that difficult, and it's a kind of fascinating aspect of the history of geometry. The Greeks, leads into all sorts of other things. But in this very famous way, Socrates goes through this demonstration and through a process of questioning, is able to get the right answer from this little boy who, again, has not been taught anything about mathematics. And Socrates, at least on the surface, says, "Oh, don't you see? I've proven that you know, knowledge is just recollection because he's just recollecting what he knew when he was born. He's just bringing it out. I'm helping him bring it out." Um, and at the end of it, turning to Meno, he says, "Well, look what I was able to do with him. This little boy who's never had an education, and no one ever taught him anything. I was able to show him that he already knew these wonderful things about geometry, and that he just needs the opportunity of recollecting them using his mind. Look at you, Meno. You're a great gentleman. I mean, and have been educated by the best sophists, educators in Greece. Surely you'll want to, you'll want to look into the nature of virtue with me, right?" I mean, it's not like he's completely sure of everything he says. At the end of it, he says, "And I, Meno, like what I am saying. Some things right here I have said, of which I am not altogether confident." I mean, he's admitting that this whole extravagant theory of knowledge is recollection would take a lot more proof. But that we shall be better and braver and less helpless if we think that we ought to inquire than we should have been if we indulged in the idle fancy that there was no knowing and no use in seeking to know what we do not know. That is a theme upon which I am ready to fight, in word and deed, to the utmost of my power. Meno, then again, there again, Socrates, your words seem to me excellent. Socrates, then, as we are agreed that a man should inquire about that which he does not know, shall you and I make an effort to inquire together into the nature of virtue? Ready? This is what he said the end of the last reading. Meno, by all means, Socrates, and yet I would much rather return to my original question, whether in seeking to acquire virtue, we should regard it as a thing to be taught or as a gift of nature or coming to men in some other way. It's like, wow. After all that, Meno, he wants to just drop the whole matter. I mean, he just goes back to his original question, as if Socrates hasn't gotten through it all. And at this point, it would be hard not to speculate that Socrates is despairing of being able to get through to Meno. Because Meno has asked this question about the way that we get virtue. And Socrates has insisted that before we can answer that question, we have to answer the question, what is virtue? And if Meno is not recognizing that, then there's perhaps very little hope of doing anything with him at all.